Okay, we are recording and we are streaming.
All right. Thanks, Nelly. I'll get started. My name is James Pepper. I'm the chair of the Vermont Cannabis Control Board. Today is Wednesday, September 27th, 2023. It's 1 p.m. and I call this meeting to order. Just start by noting that Julie Holbert, our other board member, had a scheduling conflict this afternoon and she won't be joining us today. However, I think we can proceed without her. I think I'll start just by noting a historic moment that happened in the Senate Banking Committee earlier this morning. Um, I never really hold my breath about anything that happens in DC, but in a rare throwback moment to regular order, the Safe Banking Act, which has been renamed the Safer Banking Act, was voted out of that committee with bipartisan support, and it's on its way to the full Senate floor. Everything I'm reading is suggesting we're headed for a prolonged government shutdown at the federal level. And of course, even absent that, the dynamic in the House, which historically has passed this bill 7 different times since 2019, has shifted. And so the future of this bill is still very much up in the air. Let's see, we've been fielding a number of requests from our licensees regarding the ability for them to operate in multiple distinct locations under one license. Most typically, these are requests to grow in one location and to cure and process in another. Part of our mission is to encourage participation by small farmers, and many of the requests are coming from small farmers asking to use their existing infrastructure, even if it doesn't all exist in one single location. No matter how much sense it would make for us to accommodate these requests, the one license type per entity and the one location per license were among the foundational tenets of Act 164. We don't have any wiggle room when the law is that direct. The guidance that we've been offering people is that the law requires one location per license, not one location per entity, meaning that a cultivator that wants to grow in one location and then dry and cure and process, or et cetera, in another could avoid this location problem by getting a wholesale license. Certainly, we recognize that the additional hardship that getting 2 licenses poses, but that is one straightforward way that would allow a single entity to operate at 2 locations. It feels important, given some of the reporting about the recent Higher Calling Festival, that we reiterate the current state of the law around public consumption and special events. Namely, any event that's advertised to the general public as consumption friendly or has any sort of sales of cannabis or cannabis products is prohibited. And an event is not private because it takes place on private property or IDs are checked at the door. Cannabis consumption is prohibited in almost all public and commercial contexts. Sales are restricted to licensed cannabis establishments, retail establishments, I should say. There's a lot of political and public will to change this and offer, for instance, cultivators more direct access to consumers. However, if we try and get ahead of this and, have a few missteps along the way, it can really set back any momentum towards that end. And then just one quick reminder that the second meeting of the Act 65 working group is meeting tomorrow from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. over our Teams. The link to join and the agenda are up on our events page. This meeting is going to focus on qualifying conditions for the medical program, treatment protocols, and how cannabis use is communicated to patients and patient providers. We encourage anyone who's interested in the medical program to attend if possible. If not, to watch the recording on our YouTube page and to share your thoughts with the board. You can always email ccb.med, M-E-D, at vermont.gov. And with that, we just have to approve the minutes from our last meeting on, was it August 30th, 2023? Kyle, have you had a chance to look through those?
Yes, I have
All right, is there a motion?
a motion to approve the minutes from the August 30th meeting.
I suppose I'll second. And sounds like it's probably all in favor too.
That's right.
All right. Hi.
We haven't done this, just two of us, so.
I know. All right. Well, just moving through the agenda then. We, at our last meeting, spoke a little bit about requiring ISO certification for our testing labs, licensed testing labs in the state. We had some initial conversations with our executive director about that. I think I'd like to continue that conversation today. I think we have Luke Emerson, who's Luke, maybe you're the director of BIA Labs. Let's see.
Hey, yes, correct. President and laboratory director at BIA Diagnostics.
Great. And welcome back. Good to see you again. I think Kyle and I just, and I know Julie as well, just had a few questions about it. It would be kind of a big shift, although not something that's out of line or kind of not a bad thing. But figure we might just bring you to a meeting and ask you a few questions about the process. Can I just start by asking, is BIA ISO certified for cannabis?
It is. We've been certified on the food side since 2012, and we got certified for cannabis in 2021. So yes, we have been for the last 2 years.
Well, do you mind just taking a few questions from Kyle and me just to keep the kind of conversation going before we really kind of think about whether this should be a requirement?
Absolutely.
Hi, Luke.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I'd start just by asking you, how long the process took and what the kind of costs were for BIA to get it done.
Yeah, it's been a while because we did our initial assessment again like 10 years ago. And the speed of it kind of depends on how, focused you are. I think you could do it in 6 months. It varies generally between like 3 months and a year, depending on how quickly you're doing everything. But, the cost I want to say was something around $15,000, plus you need to pay for the auditor to come out, which is another 5 to 7. That might have changed in the last 10 years. And then every 2 years you have a site audit. That's another, $7,000 where an assessor comes out for 2 days.
Yeah.
So it's significant.
Yeah. And, I'm wondering, ISO is an accreditation or certification agency or body. I always wonder, if we're saying you have to be ISO certified, should the language in our rule be ISO or kind of an ISO equivalent certification agency? But I just don't know much about anything other than ISO. Are there other ones that you're aware of, and do they kind of hold the same repute as, that same reputation as ISO?
So the short answer is no. ISO is a standard. There are something like 30,000 international standards depending on what you're doing. There's standards for shipping containers. There's standards for pretty much any international business. ISO 17025 is the international standard for testing laboratories. You get accredited by various certification bodies. We go through A2LA, American Association of Lab Accreditors. There's Perry Johnson is another one. They're all accrediting to the same standard, but to my knowledge, there's not an equivalent scheme, system to ISO, especially that focuses on cannabis. So, the labs are free to choose from the different accreditation bodies. I think there's 3 in the US. The process and the cost is similar between all 3 of them.
Luke, thanks for joining us today. Are you required to submit any proficiency testing as part of your accreditation renewal?
Yes, and that in my opinion is the most important part. You have to submit proficiency results from an accredited proficiency testing provider every year for every method you participate in. You're accredited for. That's a big part of it.
Are they looking for, the one criticism that I've heard, and I don't know if there's any legitimacy to it, is that, the accreditation is looking for your ability to replicate results, so consistency, not necessarily accuracy. Is that a fair critique, or is that just kind of overblown?
I think it's about 50-50. So a lot of people do criticize it for being an exercise in paperwork, which it largely is. It's mostly started in case let's say you go to court over a result a year from now. You want to be able to replicate that exactly with the operator, the piece of equipment, the standards, tracking all of that. You do have to do method validations, and show accuracy, and you do have to run an accuracy control with every batch of samples you run. And then obviously pass the proficiency test, but they give you a pretty wide window there. The difficult part is there's no true reference material for cannabis in the US. Like currently you can get essentially a blank hemp matrix spiked with, the extracted separate cannabinoids. So it's not a true, high THC flower with an exactly known concentration. It's not a perfect system, but at least you're comparing it to all the other labs in the US that are participating.
Yeah.
So I'd say, as to your initial question, I'd say it's 50% documentation and record keeping and 50% accuracy and reproducibility.
Yeah.
So Luke, you said oh, go ahead, Cover.
Well, I mean, my fundamental question is really like, we don't want, I mean, we've seen in other states that there's kind of this lab shopping that goes around. We have a very small number of labs in our state, of course, and it's a little bit easier to kind of bring you all together and get on the same page. But do you think, in a larger state that has more labs, or maybe one day when we have more labs in the state, that this would help prevent a desire to lab shop, kind of like pay for the results you want, essentially?
I do, yeah, eventually. Again, I don't know how important it is right now. I don't really have any concerns, with the lab shopping or significantly different results, certainly right now. I think, yeah, in California or something like that, Colorado, it would definitely help.
Yeah.
And certainly if it becomes, the reason we did it was if it becomes federal at some point, we want to be able to compete on a federal level, be ready for that.
Well, you answered my next question, Luke. I know you said you did this 2 years ago, which is before our program. And I know the hemp program at one point in time was headed in this direction.
Yeah.
Is there any other reasons that, besides, federal action, which is, arguably 5 to 10 years away, maybe, that you thought 2021 was the appropriate time for you to move in that direction?
Well, I think it was partly because we were participating in the hemp. We were the only lab in the state, doing the hemp testing, and we already had ISO. We had an assessor coming anyway. We had done our method validations. It was pretty minimal expense for us to add it at the time. We weren't expecting it to become federal anytime soon, but it was more of a why not situation.
And I know you've talked a little bit about the costs and getting auditors to come out and do the accreditation. How often do you need to recertify or reaccredit yourself to maintain?
Every 2 years,
2 years?
So you get it visited by an auditor 1 year, then the next year you have like a virtual desk paperwork audit, and the following year you have them come back out. So I think there's an annual fee of a few $1,000s, and then every other year it's like $5,000 to $7,000 to have them come visit your site. Plus there is, you have to pay more for the proficiency tests, and you end up doing more add-on testing and that sort of thing, which all adds up.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, with just a finer point on that, but nonetheless, you still find it, I know you said 50-50, whether it's, I don't want to say worth it or not when it comes to an accurate versus a consistent, measurement or standard, but you still find going in this direction to be worth it?
I will admit that I'm a little biased because we are ISO certified. You know what I mean? I think when there's only 2 labs, and if you can show equivalency to each other, I think just requiring participating in the PT program would be sufficient. Again, to James's point, if there were many labs and we were worried about shopping and inflating results and that sort of thing, I think it would be a lot more important.
Right.
It does help. It does give you a record and give you documentation and a third-party stamp saying, yes, you're meeting these requirements. But what is that worth? That depends on who you ask.
Fair enough.
Are you certified? Is it kind of certified for just potency, or is it for kind of pesticides, purity, heavy metals?
It's good. It is by method. Right now, we're only potency and heavy metals because that's as far as we got for the hemp program until that kind of petered out. We are planning on adding the other methods, regardless. Over the next few years, kind of in anticipation of federal, mostly because the big labs in Massachusetts and Maine that I'm aware of do have pretty much all of their methods under their ISO scope.
Yeah.
MCR, PCR, like Nova Analytics, all those big ones I'm familiar with certainly do, but it's more of a competitive advantage. They use it more as a marketing tool than because it's required by the states, I believe.
I think that's the main concerns that I had about it. I think that, Julie, when we told her we were going to have this conversation, she said she couldn't be here, may have some follow-up questions for you that we could maybe put into email. But I think those are the main issues you addressed that were kind of lingering in my mind. Is your bottom line just that this is a good thing to do for us, this requirement?
I would be in favor of it, yes. Given time, giving people time to meet the requirements. Yes.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to work towards over the next couple of years, certainly.
Yeah. Anything else?
I don't have any more questions.
No.
I'm good. Thank you so much, Luke, for taking some time to speak with us today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Well, I think, of course, Kyle, I think we should table any kind of decision on requiring ISO certification, or even just kind of like being on the path towards ISO certification for our labs until a later meeting. But I think that was helpful for me at the very least, and I got some questions answered.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, Bryn, we are a little ahead of schedule, but maybe I'll turn things over to you for the executive director report.
Sounds good.
While Brent's getting ready, can I just throw a reminder to everybody listening out there to please join these meetings with your camera off and yourself muted, so Nellie doesn't have to play the game of whack-a-mole of finding you and either turning off your camera or muting you from our end of this. It really disrupts some of the guests that we have that come on and speak with us and our ability to kind of maintain our thought process if there's a lot of background noise. So thank you.
Was testing my LASIK surgery, how far I can see up there, but I did it. Okay, so here's your executive director report for our September meeting. Starting off with our public engagement summary. So these are all upcoming public engagement opportunities. The first one is coming up tomorrow. The Medical Program Study Committee has held one of its 4 meetings that are scheduled to take place over the fall and winter, early winter. So the second one of those meetings is coming up tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. There is an agenda and a link to join embedded in this presentation, which will get posted to the website after the meeting. You can also find that information on the calendar portion of our website. And then the other 2 bullets here are our first licensee education and enforcement trainings. So these are the trainings that are required by Rule 2 to be held, I believe every licensee has to complete one of these trainings once every 3 years. So this is our first batch of these trainings that we're offering. And the first one will be held on November 7th at 5 p.m. The next one will be Thursday, November 9th at 10 a.m. And there will likely be one more that we schedule. So these trainings are specifically for our cultivator licensees, and they are required for every principal and controller of a cultivation license. So Nellie is going to be getting more information out to all of the people that this training pertains to in the next couple of weeks. But we put it here just to give everybody the first notice that these required trainings are coming up in a little over a month. So with that, I'm going to move into our licensing data. So all this data is current as of the 25th. So the first set of slides are our number of issued licenses. So first slide here is the number of issued cultivation licenses by type and tier. So these are all of the licenses that we've issued that are out there in the world, broken out by type. So the top are our indoor cultivators, middle are our mixed cultivators, bottom are our outdoor cultivators. Next are our manufacturing licenses. These are the issued manufacturing licenses by tier. And next are the remaining license types. So we've issued 65 retailers as of the 25th. And then this next set of slides is our renewal data. So I think you'll remember at the last board meeting, we had some comparison data that provided you with some percentages of each license type that had renewed. We're not doing that at this meeting. We're probably not going to do that again until the end of the year, when we'll have some more reliable data that can show how many of each type and tier of our issued licenses are renewing. So for now, these are just the straight numbers of who is renewing. So obviously, the majority of our renewals are for cultivators, since they were the first licenses we issued last year. And then there are fewer of the remaining license types, since we didn't start issuing these types of licenses until August of last year. Okay, so I'll move on to our retail locations. So this is our areas of density chart that shows where in the state of Vermont do we have the largest number of retail licensees that are kind of congregating. So there is no change in the number for Burlington, which is the area of greatest density. Morrisville has gone up one. They have one more licensed retailer than they did last month. But the only other change here is the queue. There was, I think, one in the queue in Rutland at the last meeting, but that was a miscount, where there were 2 in the queue last meeting. So small change there. And then here's our map of where our retail locations are located in the state, just so you can have a visual picture of the distribution there. And then our zoom in on the Burlington location, which is our greatest area of density. So you can see where those shops are open in the metropolis of Burlington. Okay. So following slide, unless there are any questions, I'm just zipping through. This is our list of licensees that have confirmed that they will not be renewing their license as of September 26th. So so there are a total of 8 tier 1 outdoor cultivators that have decided not to renew. And this represents a gain of 2. So there are 2 additional licensees here on this list since the last board meeting. Both of them indoor tier 1 standard priority status licensees. So small change since last month. And as I mentioned last month, we are collecting some data from all of our licensees that have decided not to renew. We have our field agents have an exit interview with these licensees. And that's really in an effort to better understand what factors are playing a role in our licensees' decision to not renew. I don't have any, because there are so few of them so far, I don't have any sort of aggregated data to show you just yet, but I can share with you that so far the majority of these licensees are making their decision based on really just personal circumstances. There is no one singular factor that is sort of dominating in the decisions to not renew, but the majority for these folks has been really quite personal individual circumstances that led to their decision to not renew. So as this list grows and as our data comes in and we're able to sort of aggregate that data for you, we will do that at future board meetings. I'll pause there if there are any questions. Okay.
No,
For me,
no.
makes
Yeah.
sense.
Okay, so moving on to our license canopy capacity slides. So this slide is going to look a little different as time goes on. Right now, we've just got the August and September data points to show the growth in indoor and outdoor capacity. So we are up to almost 575,000 square feet of outdoor canopy, and that's inclusive of the outdoor portion of our mixed licensees. Indoor is at 366,000. Again, that's inclusive of the indoor portion of our mixed licenses. So a little bit of growth in both those areas between August and September. And the next slide shows our capacity versus our utilization. So the dark green bar on the top is what the utilization looks like so far of our licensed canopy. The light green is just our actual capacity for licensed canopy. So you can see that there's sort of a half, like less than half of the utilization rate for our indoor canopy. And that's really due to the majority of our mixed licensees at this point are not utilizing the indoor portion of their license. So these numbers are a reflection of the renewal inspections that our field agents are doing. So at this point in the year, the focus for our mixed cultivators is really on their outdoor grow. And like I said, the majority of those mixed licensees are at 0% for their indoor portion of their grow. And their plans are typically that they will shift to their indoor canopy when the outdoor harvest season is over. So I think that is what is to account for that low number of utilization of indoor canopy. Okay, now I'll move along to our compliance data. So starting out with our advertising data. Again, this is just a sort of a summary of what our advertising submissions look like. That approved number, which is at 57% this month, is just creeping up month by month, that more folks are getting approved at the outset. And I think that's really just due to education, as we continue to sort of educate our licensees on what is required for proposed advertisement to meet the statutory criteria, and be acceptable for publication. So the reasons for denial listed there, again, the primary reason for denial continues to be that there is insufficient data to meet that 15% youth audience composition threshold. And that 48% numbers is still pretty high because we're still doing some education on that. Some licensees continue to provide sort of general information, like I'm proposing to put an advertisement, on my local bulletin board, and there are never any kids there, so that's why that's the data they're submitting, and we're just sort of educating folks to let them know that we do require some sort of independent third-party analysis of what the youth audience composition looks like in order for us to approve that that advertising medium for a cannabis licensee advertisement.
And can I ask the question there, Bryn, is have we seen people be successful in providing this youth audience threshold data?
Yep, typically our state newspapers are a good place to advertise, because the audience composition for print newspaper tends to be pretty solidly in the over 21 range. So yes, the people are successful.
Okay, great. And the newspapers, the larger ones, I assume, do keep track of that data, those demographic
They
data.
do. Yep. The newspapers are, part of our education effort has also been with the print media and the online media to help them understand what kind of analytics we need to make our determination. And they all seem to be on board, and
Great.
they're submitting their third-party data to us with some regularity at this point.
All right.
So this slide is our summary of our compliance efforts since the last board meeting. So just a high-level summary here that we've gotten 7 new complaints in the last 4 weeks and have undertaken a total of 10 new investigations. The little inset bullets there cover what those investigations are about. Inversion, one location rule, unlicensed cultivation operation, on-site consumption, and an unlicensed retail operation. And the asterisk there on the unlicensed cultivation and retail operations just notes that those investigations are being conducted in partnership with DLL and the agents over there at DLL. So those are our first investigations that we have conducted in partnership with that agency. So that seems worthy of noting. And other than that, the field agents have observed a product destruction for one licensee and have engaged in an environmental efficiency corrective action plan with another licensee. Questions there before I move on to the medical program?
Well, I mean, it is notable, this partnership with DLL. Of course, that's required by the governor's 10-point safety plan. And I think that the rationale really is that unlicensed cultivation, unlicensed retail implicates criminal laws. And so while our compliance officers are not sworn law enforcement, DLLs are, and there needs to be some kind of coordination when violations, implicate criminal actions. So yeah, it is kind of a new world, but thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome. Okay, I'll move on to our medical program data. So we are starting with the same charts we always start with that should look familiar, of our total patient and caregiver registry numbers. That is our plummeting line graph there. The closer look reveals that I think that we've had a small bump up in patients. I think we have about 60 additional patients this month than we did last month. And our caregiver number has dropped by 5. So just keeping you apprised of how that the numbers are looking there. This slide is just a comparison as we watch those numbers of registered patients and caregivers drop. The team put together some data on what our qualifying conditions are for patients. And this is in comparison to the data set that you looked at in March. So you'll remember we had some data about what qualifying conditions our registered patients had back in March, and just wanted to do some comparison data to show you that pretty much across the board, our patients that are dropping off of the registry are patients that have all of the qualifying conditions. So there's only 2, I think, qualifying conditions where there was a slight growth in patients, and that is patients with a qualifying condition of glaucoma and patients with a qualifying condition of PTSD, a small increase in those folks. But other than that, across the board, the numbers of qualifying conditions are dropping. And just a deeper dive there into the qualifying condition that's relevant to the symptom. So we've got these are our series of symptoms that will qualify you for to be on the patient registry. And you can see here, again, there's sort of a across the board drop in these symptoms that will qualify you. So moving on, unless there are any questions, sorry. Stay there for a moment.
No, thank you.
Okay. So I'll move on now to the staff recommendations. And we're starting here with recommendations for social equity status approval. There are 2 applicants that staff is recommending for social equity status approval. Submission number 3279 and submission number 4796. Both of these applicants are being recommended for social equity status because they meet the criteria for a social equity business applicant as defined in board rule. And then the following slides are staff recommendations for licensure. So the licensees and applicants that appear on the next 2 slides have all demonstrated that they are in compliance with the requirements for their license that are contained both in board rule and in statute. So our recommendations for initial licensure can be found on this page. I'll just go through them because there's just 1 page of them. Verbio Labs LLC, applying for a Tier 2 manufacturing license. Palatino Ronci is applying for a retail license. Budzone is applying for a small indoor Tier 1 cultivation license. The Heady Reaper applying for an indoor Tier 1 cultivation license. Green Key Cannabis applying for a Tier 1 indoor cultivation license. Green Mountain Cure applying for a Tier 2 manufacturing license. Funks Farming applying for a Tier 1 manufacturing license. Apple Soup applying for a Tier 2 manufacturing license. The 5 Seasons Cannabis Company applying for a retail license. Gas and Weed Company applying for a retail license. Vermont Maple Edibles applying for a Tier 2 manufacturing license. And Royal Highness Farms, excuse me, applying for an indoor Tier 1 cultivation license. So those are all of your applicants that staff is recommending for approval of their initial license. So these are new licensees. Next page is our recommendations for renewal of a license. So the list is Budbird Farm, 1958 LLC, Vermont Vital Cultivars, Way Up High There, Split Acres Sungrown, Vermont Cannabis Distributors, Burns Flowers, Vermont Bud Barn, Midnight Farm, Greaseline Cannabis, Crescent Moon Farm, and Florist BT. And that's the end of your report this month.
All right. Thanks for the report and all the work that goes into putting that together. Let's see. Any questions for Brian about it?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the staff recommendations as presented to us?
Move that we accept each of the recommendations from our executive director as presented in this meeting.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Julie's got the motions down. I totally don't. She usually takes
No,
care
that
of
was
so
great.
thanks for bearing with me.
No, it's great. All right. Well, again, we're a little ahead of schedule, but why don't we move to public comment? We'll handle it the same way as always. If you join via the link, please raise your virtual hand. We'll call on you in the order that you raise your hand, and then we'll move to people that join via phone.
Scott is up first.
Hi, I just had a quick question on the retailer density slide. In Brattleboro, we have 3 retailers and rumors of a 4th, yet we weren't on the slide, and I was just curious, is it just not enough room, or is there something that's changed?
Yeah, thanks for the comment. We'll probably for next meeting add Brattleboro on the list.
And if there's rumors, that might not necessarily mean that they're in our queue already, for what it's worth, Scott.
Esperanza.
Hi, it's Esperanza and Jordan. We're both here. So we had a question about the plastic, or not plastic necessarily, but the bagged packaging. And I apologize, we linked on about 5-10 minutes late, so it may have been addressed already. But we were looking for clarity on if there will be bagged packaging in the future, due to the fact that we sort of designed our package around bags, and I think just recently we're no longer accepting bags for edibles.
All right, thanks for the comment. Anyone else who joined via the link, just raise your virtual hand. And if you join via the phone and would like to make a public comment, you can unmute yourself by hitting *6.
Tito.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
So just to comment on Total Canopy, it feels like when we were talking about this ages ago, it was about 400,000 square feet we were looking for. So it seems like we're there. It definitely feels like it's time to close down these bigger tier levels. That's it. Hope everybody's having a great day.
Yeah, thanks, Tito.
Evo.
Thanks to the board for the consideration on the license. We're super stoked to be entering the retail marketplace here and looking forward to seeing everybody soon. So thanks for your work, guys and girls.
Thanks, Evo.
Dan.
Hey, everybody. I just wanted to say congrats to Gaston Weed Company for all the hard work you guys put in. Congrats.
Thanks, Dan. Anyone else by video or phone? And again, *6 to unmute your phone if you'd like to comment. All right. I'll close the public comment window. And, Kyle, I don't know, like, if you want to just say a quick word about packaging. We are evaluating what we believe is kind of the best option out there. But it's not quite perfect, but we're seeing what we can do. I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
Yeah, I can put a finer point on that. We have been engaged with a couple of companies that are making bioplastic bags out of specific polymers that we think would work for our somewhat archaic waste systems in Vermont. Those biopolymers are PHA or bio-PBS, we're seeing a lot of waivers that are put forward for other biopolymers that just don't fit what we're trying to accomplish because they need industrial composting conditions in order to break down. So, the Humidico lids are made of PHA. They work in a home compost setting. They also work in anaerobic landfill conditions. Burying something in soil is not the same as that. There is a biopolymer out there called PBAT, but that's petroleum based and has some characteristics. You see it a lot in the agriculture world with ag plastic and ag soil. They're not the same. We are, as the chair alluded to, talking with a couple companies. There's just a couple things that we need to see to feel comfortable for it to meet both the child resistant standard that we need to implement and those waste considerations. And there's a couple companies that are out there trying to get something certified CR. So more info soon. To the folks that are looking to package their products in a plastic bag, I would consider not waiting around for us to find that right size fits all for this market and explore other options. These waivers only last about a year. We look at them every year, and we're really trying to move away from as much plastic as we possibly can.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. I see one more hand raised. I'm happy to just reopen public comment for one last commenter. I saw this person kind of jump into the meeting late, so I'll reopen the window for just one comment. Preach guest, do you want to unmute and provide a comment? Going once, going twice. Okay, well, anyone who didn't get I'll close the public comment window. Anyone who didn't get a chance to comment, you can always email the board. Those public comments go straight to our inbox. We read them all. So it's ccb.info@vermont.gov. And I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for joining.